Landlords in California say the eviction process is broken so badly that tenants can live indefinitely without paying rent. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today. It's coming out of the great state of California, and it has to do with the ridiculous tenant protections they have in the state, okay? So they basically think that tenants are always in the right and landlords are always in the wrong. No matter what you do, you cannot win. And every year, new laws are passed that punish landlords for having the audacity of investing their money in the great state of California. You know, they hate business owners there, they hate landlords there, and they treat you like you're a scumbag because you had the wherewithal to purchase a property and then rent it out to somebody who needed housing, okay? And the only thing you expected was to be able to make money. Okay, you expected to be able to make money. You shouldn't have done that because California is moving in the way of socialism and they don't think that it's right to make money. They don't think it's right that some people make a lot of money and become very wealthy. They don't like people who can afford to buy real estate because they are the rich people, right? They are considered the rich people there because the property values are so high. So they want to punish you. And they will punish you by putting all these laws into place to basically siphon your money away from you and then give it to somebody else. And I'm 100% opposed to it, okay? I can't stand these laws. I can't stand the way that they treat landlords in California and places like that. And that's why I bring these videos to you every day. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So first of all, right, would you or do you invest in the state of California? Okay, and I just want to know the rationale behind why you would, you know, and there's nothing wrong with it, okay? I am all for you making money. If you found a way to go about the process, make a good amount of money, good for you, okay? I'm just telling you why I personally wouldn't. And you know, part of it has to do with my peace of mind. I like to be able to say, hey, I don't need the stress. I don't need to jump through 1,000 hoops. And I don't have the sort of money necessary in order to make the kind of investments that a lot of the people who are making money in the state of California are making. So, you know, for me as a small landlord, it wouldn't work, okay? So anyway, I'm going to get into this article, tell you what the landlords themselves are saying about the whole eviction process in the state. This article is coming from CBS8.com and it says, San Diego landlords say eviction process is broken as tenants stay without paying rent. No rent relief, no rent, no relief, and no end in sight. Small landlords say they're drowning in debt as tenants stay for months without paying. Yeah, and this is something I've talked about many times, right? A lot of the people, they don't see a profit on their real estate investment until they sell. Okay, they are literally losing money every single month that they own a property. And it shouldn't be that way, okay? I'm not saying that you should be making a huge fortune, but every single month when you get paid, you should have more money than all of your expenses, okay? After you pay your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, after you pay for your property management and any maintenance and everything, you should have some money left over. And if you're not, then something's wrong, okay? And that's regardless of where you're investing. But in California, I know a lot of people, they work on the strategy of the appreciation. Well, I don't believe that that's a long-term strategy for smaller investors. But anyway, let me get into the article and see what it says. What happens when a tenant stops paying rent, but the legal system prevents the landlord from evicting them for months? That's the reality for many small landlords across San Diego County who say the state's overloaded eviction system is costing them tens of thousands of dollars, not to mention time, stress, and in some cases, their financial security. We lost $22,000 and just wanted them out. In El Cajon, Dana Logsden says his tenants stopped paying rent last September after living in the home for over a decade. What followed was 6 months of non-payment and vague promises. And that's the kind of situation I hate hearing about, okay? You have a tenant who you think is a good tenant, okay? They've lived in your property for 10 years, okay? They lived in there for over a decade, according to this article, but suddenly they stop paying rent, and now you have to remove them from there, right? Well, in a place like California, oftentimes, rather than going through the eviction process, rather than losing, months on end of rent, it is cheaper to pay them to leave. And I know that, when I first heard about this sort of thing, it was hard for me to believe that I can't believe that a landlord would pay someone to leave, right? But it makes financial sense when you are losing tens of thousands of dollars. These people are down 22 grand, right? They might have been able to pull out 10 grand and say in the first month and say, hey, will you leave if I give you 10 grand? And they might have said yes. Then you would have only lost 10 grand instead of 22. So, you still would have lost, but you would have lost less. That's a hard pill to swallow for mom and pop landlords, but it's the truth. And I've read so many stories just like that. I would request, when can we expect a payment? And they'd say, we don't know. We're working on it, said Logsdon. Faced with a slow-moving court process and increasing legal fees, Logsdon made a difficult decision. His attorney offered to forgive the $22,000 in unpaid rent if the tenants would simply leave. He negotiated and said, look, if you guys leave now, we're going to forgive it. But they could have dragged it out another 6 months, Logsdon said. The tenants finally vacated the home in April. Now Logsdon is focused on remodeling the interior and moving on. So yeah, he said it himself, okay? Basically, they were able to negotiate. They didn't pay anything, but they said, hey, we're going to forgive this $22,000 that you owe us. Just get out right now. Otherwise, it would have been $44,000. Okay, so taking the $22,000 loss was still a benefit, but what kind of business can you operate where you are losing that much money? Okay, think about it for a minute, right? Let's say that, just theoretical, right? Your monthly profit, I'm not talking about the monthly amount that you're bringing in rental income, okay? Your rents could be like $3,000 or $4,000 a month, but your monthly profit could be $500 a month. Okay, let's say that in this case, the landlord's profit is $500 a month. How long will it take the landlord, once they re-rent this property out, to make up for that $22,000 that they lost at $500 a month? It'll take them 44 months, okay? And that's darn near 4 years just to make up the money that they lost from a single tenant, okay? So, wow. And I've done this math on my own properties after I've had to evict tenants, after I've had property damage, etc. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at all. And just like in California, sometimes, even here in Nebraska, you only make money when you sell, okay? So unfortunately, this is a huge loss, and this will drive a lot of people out of business. This will lead to some people being financially ruined. Imagine paying the mortgage for the house you live in, as well as the mortgage for a house that somebody else is living in who refuses to pay you. And the government will not allow you to remove that person. Can you imagine that? Okay, that's nightmarish, but that's what we deal with every single day. Nearly a year with no rent and no relief. In Mission Valley, Trent Ralston is still in the thick of it. His tenant stopped paying rent after the first month nearly a year ago. Since then, Ralston says the unpaid rent has piled up to over $30,000. The wedding plans had to stop. The Pop Warner Leagues and all the other plans had to stop because the financial burden got really high, he said. We had to refinance the house just to afford this. Even after a judge ruled in his favor, it took months for the proper documents to be made available from the court. Ralston says he's now been waiting weeks for the sheriff's department to carry out the lockout. I've got my lock in the car ready to go, he said. So as soon as I get that call, I'm ready. Now, see, and this is what I'm talking about. This person faced financial ruin, okay? They had to cut off things in their life, and they had to refinance the house, take out another loan to pay so that someone else could live for free in his property. Yet the government allows this, okay? They encourage it. They give free lawyers to tenants so that they can fight you because they have a right to stay there and essentially steal from you by staying in your property without paying any rent. And when I say steal, I mean, this is like grand theft. They are taking a service, which is, your rental housing, right, for free, with no payment whatsoever, no intention of paying you back, and they're completely screwing you over. Your credit's ruined. You know, it just sucks. It absolutely sucks. So we need to change the laws. We need to change the laws throughout the entire country to be able to get these tenants out as quickly as possible. But in California and New York and Seattle and places like that, they need to be changed first because they're even worse, okay? It's even worse for the landlords there. But what do you think, okay? I'll put a link to this article in the description down below and leave a comment and tell me what you think.